Hi, everyone. This is the video for the lecture 2 of the Urban Policy course. In this lecture 2, we will be looking at cities in the world. Today's content. This video, in the part 1, will be focused on inter-urban relations. We will look at concept, facts, and policies. And in the next video, we will be looking at a format for papers. We will learn its usages and examples. So the second part will be the very important one. All right, let's start part 1. The first section will be focused on the concept. The concept that cities are the nodes of the global networks. Okay, cities are the nodes of the networks. What does the word node mean? When there are many relations between things, and these relations are kind of this way, crossing, then we have the crossing points, right? And this crossing point we call node. So we're going to learn cities are the crossing points of global networks among cities. Okay. So let's get a go. First slide, characteristics of cities. I'd like to think what cities are. What are the characteristics of cities? This is the photograph. This is a photograph that were taken from space. Okay, here, what do we find? We find Europe, we find Northern Africa, and Near East and Middle East, right? But how do we know these are the, these places like Europe and North Africa? We know this because there are light. And because we have lights here, we know that there are cities, right? So this is why we know that there is Europe, there is Northern Africa, and so on from this photograph. It means cities are the places where many people live. And the cities are the places where many people live civilized life with electricity. Okay. Then what makes it possible? What makes these cities possible to use such, electricities and so on? Why are there so many people in cities? Let me explain this one by one. First, cities attract things. Cities attract things. Let's think about one city where many people, money, and buildings and many products we find. Okay, cities receive many things that were originally outside. For example, natural foods and materials, produced items in culture, knowledge, and technology, and maybe humans as well, human beings as well, all come from outside cities. Okay, cities are, in other words, attracting things from outside. This is one thing, but we have, of course, another side of this fact. Things also go out from cities. The things that came to cities are again transferred to outside of the cities, and the things that are created in the cities are sold and sent to somewhere else. All right, so therefore we can say things come and go. Okay, things do not only come but also go. This is what happens in cities. This is the first characteristic of cities. Second, things come and go by using the facilities and the channels for mobility. On the one hand, let us suppose there are two cities, and both cities have, of course, many facilities or institutes that attract things. For example, when things come to cities, they get to the stations, they get to accommodation, market and organizations, and so on. And on the other hand, if you want something to come to the city, you need channels or routes among cities, right? So this is what we call, channels. For example, transportation, safety, and border management, and so on. All these elements make such attraction or make such mobility possible. So cities have both of them. Cities need both facilities and channels. And together, they enable people and things to move. I said mobility, What is it? With the help of these systems, mobility emerges. But what is mobility? Mobility is the fact that things move. So if a thing is moving from place to place, city to city, we call this fact mobility. Okay, so we get the second important characteristic of the cities. Cities have facilities and channels for things to move, which means mobility. Third characteristic. This is the last one, but not least one, which is that cities have the relations with other places. There are two typical types of such relations. One is the relations between cities and the villages. Okay, it means cities are connected to villages. We call these relations rural-urban relations or urban-rural relations. Okay, this is one type, but we have another type. The other type of such relations are the ones between cities and cities. Okay, it means cities are interconnected each other. Cities and cities are connected. These relations are usually called inter-urban relations. Of course, we would call it city and city or cities and cities relations or so on, but typically or usually we call it inter-urban relations. All right. All in all, we've got the third characteristic of the cities. What is it? Cities are the nose of so many relations. We can say this too. Cities are the hubs of networks. Okay. As I already explained, node means the crossing point of many relations. Hub means the same thing. So cities are the nodes of the networks among the cities. All right, so let's take a look at quizzes. We always have these kinds of quizzes in every section. In cities, most things are acquired inside cities. Is it true or false? When contrasted with cities, villages have more facilities and channels for mobility. Is it true or not? Rural and urban areas are interconnected through moving things and people. So are the relations among urban areas. Is it true or false? Okay, now we are done with our concept. So the second section of the first part, let's look at the facts regarding the changing networks of cities. And in this section, I'd like to show you historical facts showing several types of global networks. These two famous figures who had wonderful insights about such history of global networks are important. One, on the left-hand side, is Professor Immanuel Wallerstein. Unfortunately, he died last year, but he is a very important one when you want to study history of the world. He theorized modern world system. Okay, please remember that name. And the other figure who is on the right-hand side is John Friedman. John Friedman. He was not the historian, but he was a sociologist and a geologist who studied urban studies and urban histories and so on, and urban politics, urban policies, and urban plannings. Anyway, what did he do? He theorized world city hypothesis. Okay, these hypotheses are a little bit different. Friedman said world city hypothesis. Okay, he was focusing on cities. Okay, we're going to look at the historical facts following these two ideas. First, this picture shows the major routes of the Silk Roads around 400 AD. So it is in the ancient times. Okay, and in the picture you see, you see a Chinese area on the right-hand side, but on the opposite side you see, Mediterranean Sea and Turkey and maybe a little bit of Greece. Okay, so this is a kind of map of the world back then. The thing is, these networks connecting these countries and these cities were not dominated by any of global powers. There were many in a long rows, as you see in the picture, but no single government or no single merchant were active in all areas. Okay, what it means is this: all the products were created locally, and merchants were only trading these things, and politicians were just buying or taxing merchandise. This means that there were no such world system as we have today. In short, the worlds are still separated. They were not a kind of united. However, the world system began to develop around 1600, 1600. Okay, this is this is truly the world map, right? It includes Japan and it includes North and South Americas. Okay, this picture shows the port cities that were governed by Dutch Empire. The Dutch Empire were using these port cities around the world. What is Dutch? The Dutch means Dutch Republic. You see the name just here, a little bit small, but yes, we see Dutch Republic. So it's the name of the country. Okay, it just got independence from Spain around this period. So it was the country. How is it called now? It is the Republic of Netherlands today in English. But back then, they were called Dutch Empire. Why empire? Because they kind of dominated all the oceans in the world. So the Dutch merchants is the groups who make trading, right? The Dutch merchants set up their bases in the port cities all around the world, including Nagasaki in Japan and New Netherlands in America. It is now New York, right? Okay, they set up their bases all around the world. They owned ships sailing from Asia to America, sending so many merchandises. They gained a huge profit from this trading. The thing is, with this trading, modern world system, as Wallerstein depicted it, was formed. In this system, this is the important part, Northeast Europe became core, and outer world, American and Asian and African countries became periphery. Periphery is subordinating areas. So it was kind of dominating area and dominated areas. Okay, this is what consists of world system or modern world system. Okay, please remember core and periphery. All right, since then, in the modern world system, port cities developed and developed. This is an important point when you want to, learn the history of urban world. But after that, in addition to it, when it comes to the late 19th century, military cities emerged. Military global cities. This is a map that shows overseas bases for military troops of Russian Federation, America, and the United Kingdom, and so on. Okay. So it means these countries have so many overseas bases around the world. Okay, this is a very new thing in the human history. Before 19th century, we or any human beings had such many bases around the world. Okay, so it is a very new and recent thing. But although these military tendency is important, this is not the strongest forces affecting our urban lives, at least in recent years. Okay, military is important, but it is not all the thing that influenced us. The ever stronger influence has been coming from the changing world economy. So we gotta look at world economy now. It is said world economy developed profoundly in 20th century. This illustration is the one that Professor John Friedman showed to explain his world city hypothesis. He said in 1980s that big cities were becoming basing points for global capital. These big cities were called world cities. And world cities are the cities that is highly active in world economy. For example, in Western Europe, we have these world cities. And in Northern America, we have these world cities. And lastly, in East Asia and Southeast Asia, we have these world cities. They are usually distinguished and ranked by economic scales. The top ranked world cities are shown in this picture as the black and the big black circles. So there are these 4 or 5 cities. First, London, Paris, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Tokyo. And then we have 5, right? Okay, these are the top ranked world cities, as Friedman said. But next, there is a group of black and smaller circles. This include Madrid, Milan, Vienna, and Toronto, Miami, Houston, San Francisco, and oh, it's not in the picture, but and we have Sydney in Australia. All right, these are the ones that Friedman said second ranked. But these are also world cities. Okay, so anyway, there are so many world cities around the world, but they are especially the important ones contrasted to the cities that are not here. Okay. Then, what is important about this type of cities? These prominent cities are the places where global capital come into. Global capital, this is the very big and important word today. Global capital, in other words, global money, move from city to city because they are just money, or they are just the information of money. So they get around the world very freely, right? We can say that there is a global economy. There is networks among all the cities where the global capitals, all move on very freely. All right, this is the idea what John Friedman proposed. And this is why Friedman said these cities are basing points for capitals. They wonder these networks, but the global capitals like to be staying at New York, London, or Tokyo because you gain more profit in these cities. All right, this is the idea. This is the very basic idea. According to Friedman's hypothesis, not only enterprises move, but also workers pour into these world cities. This tendency transformed, it is said, major world cities in 1970s and afterwards. For example, New York, London, and Tokyo are pretty much known as the most famous cities that began to change in such directions. Then, what happened in these cities? First, as we already told, financial and information industry grew up in these cities. There are so many financial companies in Tokyo and in New York and more in London, right? Second, foreign capital came in. For example, New York capital come into Tokyo, and the capital in Tokyo go to New York. Okay, but also foreign migrants or foreign workers came in too. came into Tokyo, London, New York, and many cities. And lastly, domestic manufacturers and domestic workers go out of the cities. This is what happens in these global cities. Things come to the cities, but the other things go out of the cities. So it's kind of going in and going out. All this occurred in many. All this are occurring in many cities around the world, not only in Tokyo, London, and New York. So this is what was pointed by World City Hypothesis of Friedman. So you know now how important his hypothesis was. Okay. All right, let's look at our quizzes. Oh, the order is somewhat broken, but okay, let's do with this one first. According to World City Hypothesis, world cities attract global capital, whereas they push out a number of migrants. Is it true or false? Second, ancient Chinese empire created all the routes of Silk Roads. The troops of the empire sent merchandises from city to city. Is it true or false? And last, in modern Europe, a division among the areas among the core, semi-peripheral, and peripheral countries emerged, networking the port cities around the world. Okay. All right, please think of if they are right or not right. Okay, that's all about this section. So let's go to the next, third section. And let's begin the third section. In this section, we'll be looking at policies that affect the relations among cities. All right. Here, I'd like to look at how policies play important roles as to develop cities, as to develop world cities. Let's think of the communities in one of the world cities like this. And suppose there are the competing relations with other cities. In this situation, communities first begin to change, affected by the competition among cities. Then this change affects governments and companies because they want to adjust and respond to the urban change. So such governments and companies begin their own actions. So they begin to want to take their own initiative. This in turn affected the communities, and this will begin to change their city as a whole. All this will affect the position of the city in the global networks of the cities. So we understand that these actions of governments and companies are affected by global relations, but they also affect such global relations. So this is the mutual affecting structure of city actors in the city relations. Okay, this is how policies play important roles in the development of the world cities. We're going to look at some of the examples of these interactions from next slide. First, let's look at one of the topics in such world cities. It is this: inviting or rejecting capital. Concerning this topic, policies that are taken in world cities depend on who demand it. So we needed to think of 2 or 3 or more of the actors in the city. One group of actors wants to invite global capital because they believe with more money in their cities, they gain more profit. So they say, yes, it is a very good thing to accept more and more foreign money. In order to do so, they demand or insist free trade, deregulation, offshore market, and city revolution. These are the measures that welcome foreign money into their city. But of course, there are other groups. Other groups of actors think and act quite another way. They want to reject such global capital because they fear that when more money come into the city, then they gain less profit. So they are afraid that they lose their profit. So what do they say? They say no to the foreign money. They demand protective trade, re-regulation, limited market, city preservation. So it's kind of they become conservative as contrasted to the ones who want foreign monies. Okay. This is one of the very typical conflict among the actors inside of the city. And we have second example, welcoming or shunning disapproving workers. One of the actors welcome migrant workers, of course, because they enjoy more cultures and businesses when there are more workers in their city. So they say yes, come on, to the immigrants. And to that end, they insist and demand easy visas, good living conditions for foreigners and migrants, and economy that is kind and accessible for foreigners, and multilingual environment. But other groups of actors shun or disapprove migrant workers because for them, if there are more people, they don't enjoy their cultures and businesses anymore. So they fear that their jobs and cultures are threatened. They begin to say no to the immigrant workers and they demand hard visas, bad living conditions for the foreigners, economy accessible and kind only for residents, and monolingual environment. These are just examples of these measures that will be taken or insisted from the people who resist immigrant workers. Okay. Anyway, all these opposing opinions are occurring in many world cities, not only in the developed countries, but also in developing countries. Then, what should be the points of intervention or points of actions when you want to think of urban policies? This is what we're going to think about from now. To start with, I would like to look at issues in or typical issues in global cities. In this regard, relevant suggestions were given from this sociologist. Her name is Saskia Sassen. Her suggestions have been shown in her The Global City and other books. She actually published so many books about urban problems and urban cities. So her research and her findings and her argument are very famous and important for the researchers and for the students of urban policies. So let's pick up some of her typical argument. One, she says that big companies and governments in the global cities rely on both foreign capital and workers. Okay, big companies and the governments want foreign capital and workers. But two, they often don't pay enough social costs for the good living or for the good lives of the residents and the workers. So it means they just gain profit from them, but they don't pay or they don't pay any attention and don't pay any social costs for the newcomers. Isn't it a little bit unfair? Based on these ideas, she and other related scholars insist that a new formal international regime should be established, and a variety of informal local actions are also necessary. Okay, so this is what she has depicted as the new direction of urban policies. But probably you may be wondering how to do that and what are the exact policies that can be taken to solve the urban problems in the global cities. Yes, there are actually so many ideas and so many options and so many discussions. So I would like you to think about this problem in the following next slides, in the following two slides. We need to think about who should do what. Okay, who should do what? This will be the important issue. So let's look at actors and measures of the policies. We're going to look at the possible actors and the possible measures. First, diverse actors who struggle against the urban problems are important. Suppose there are urban problems, and then there are governmental organizations such as international, federal, state, and local governments, and they are the most formal actors that struggle against urban problems, right? They are the most formal actors. But they are not the only actors that are active in urban problems. We also have sectoral units and sectoral organizations. These groups include companies, chambers of commerce, United Workers, and United Farmers, and so on. In short, these organizations could be called occupational groups or groups that have something to do with occupations. There are also active group of citizens, such as NGOs, NPOs, community boards, and social welfare boards, and so on. Okay, they are kind of a little informal, but there are still many big NGOs and NPOs in the world. And lastly, we have very informal networks in communities, such as that of residents, that of workers, that of parents, that of children, that of the youth, that of the elders, that of the people with disability, and so on. So networks is not an organization, but they have so many numbers of people inside their communities. So they will be the very important actors who struggle against urban problems too. Anyway, all these kinds of actors should together tackle problems, right? When you think of the problems of globalization, both formal and informal efforts are important, and both international and local efforts are important. Okay, so as Professor Sassen has insisted, we also should think about the multiple diverse actors who are combined to tackle urban problems. Okay. Second, we should also consider multiple measures to take. Probably, we can change legal regulations, such as the international laws, national regulations, local ordinances, and so on. But we also have these fields. We can change spaces and constructions, such as changing land uses, changing buildings, changing infrastructure, changing transportation, and so on. We can also change political economies. If you want, you can affect or you can create one very new economic system. And you will probably be able to change political systems, such as political party system or political election system, and so on. And we can also change societies and cultures themselves. For example, we can change education, art, sciences, and other things. Therefore, it is strongly expected that these actions, when combined, will improve the lives of workers and residents in cities. So I recommend you focus on one or more of these measures and search for what kinds of actions are being taken and are possible. This will be a very hard task, but work hard and you will get something important from studying these multiple measures to take. All right, so we're going to have the last set of quizzes. First, governments are the only actors that conduct public policies in cities. Is it true or false? Second, typically, resident networks in urban communities are informal, so it is impossible that they seek for changes in laws. Is it true or false? 3. In cities such as New York, big enterprises sought for free finance and trade, and the state governments followed it. Both these efforts help create global cities. True or false? And four, as migrants pour into global cities, governments become generous and supply them with housings, education, welfare, etc. So, a new international regime to protect migrants' lives is a ridiculous idea. Is it true or false? So they were the quizzes that we have today. There are actually 3 quizzes corners, right? And we had 10 quizzes. So please respond to all of these quizzes, please. Okay, make sure you answer all these questions. Otherwise, the score will not be given to today's test. Okay, this is the source of information for the material that I use in this first part. All right, that's all about the first part. Everyone, please take a short break and refresh yourself. And when you're ready, please go back and go to the next video. Okay, in the next video, you'll see very important instructions about how to write academic papers. Okay, so all right, so let's see there. Bye.